You know, when you're younger, you don't really realize how much you really are negotiating in your daily life. But it really is it's the great skill. It's the great skill in my marriage. It's the great skill in football. It's the great skill in business. It's the skill, and it's all about people. And it takes it's all kinds of elements to it too. There's all kinds of angles to negotiation in my mind. There's classic negotiations for contracts between an agent and a management, and what are the elements of that negotiation? There's elements of subtle negotiation between me and my teammates, right? Because there's 11 guys on this field together, all different nationality, not nationality, but race and religion, socioeconomic background, geography, language. I mean, everybody's from everywhere, right? So we're all together, and there's elements of negotiation in getting everyone across the line, both metaphorically and in reality, to get people across the goal line.
And as you say that, I just think of a story you told me once. So one thing that an athlete certainly does is negotiate with their agent and through their agent. Your agent, fairly famously, Lee Steinberg became, I think, really famous because of you. Did you guys always have a good working relationship? How did you negotiate with each other? And tell us a couple stories about that.
He was just a few years older than me when I first came out of college. He was he's 28 and I was 21. And he had just landed a couple of big quarterbacks, and he was starting the business. And it was interesting. He had his own tactics about negotiating with management, and they mostly centered around getting people either loose with alcohol and then waiting until the middle of the night and just basically working them into submission about 2 or 3 in the morning, like, we can't stop until this is over. And one of the tactics that he used very effectively is he'd call me 4 in the morning. Okay, here's the deal. And I'd write it down. And then he'd call me at 5:30. Okay, the sun's not up yet, but it's this. And it had gone up, inevitably. And so, I won't say that that's a great tactic, but he would use his stamina to to negotiate through endless hours. He would just kind of work. He was a bulldog about it, and I think he basically wore people down, and just kind of finally got to a point where and then he also over-prepared. He would put a book together, led by another guy named Scott Parker, who was, Scott Parker was a guy that loved the gory details. I mean, absolutely data-driven, completely engrossed in just different ways to look at the same player. Like, he would cut me up in different ways to compare me with Newt Rockne to Dan Marino to Joe Montana, and it always made it favorable. He'd figure out all these angles to why Steve Young really relates to in different statistics and so forth, and he made a book out of it, a presentation. And so general managers would get this presentation. They're used to saying, hey, we want our guy, he's better, and then he'd go, no, he stinks, he's oral, That was the way they used to negotiate. And here it was, they were using that kind of moral high ground of logic. Like, here, look we're just logically walking through this. Tell me where this doesn't make sense. And he would cover all the loopholes, and because the other guy wasn't as prepared. Certainly there's another way to cut that same data and make me look bad, right? If he can make me look good, he can cut it the other way and make you look bad. But he'd over-prepared to a point where they weren't ready to make me kind of cut it the other way. And it's tough in a negotiation to all of a sudden say, oh, time out. I need some time to go work through this data. It's like we're in the middle of it. We're in the mix. And so you kind of get swamped that way. So he was always that's his negotiation tactics. But one thing I learned about him over the years is also just a negotiation between he and I. Because, you want people to do a great work for you. And sometimes you pay them, but that's not necessarily what everybody's most effective way to inspire them to do a great job. Lee Steinberg loved to be in the limelight. He was a lawyer out of Berkeley that loved to be, kind of in the mix. And so I learned that in any time that he and I were together, if I would include him in the TV shot, you mean move him and we'd talk together, he was energized. And I knew that that's what he wanted.